Thank you, Mariana, and thank you all for being with us today to discuss the investigation cases in regard to corruption. This time we are digging deep about the issues and the cases in Latin America. I want to just remind you that this event is co-organized by Digital Communication Network Global and World Learning, which is a part, and this event is a part of DCN's Ideas in Action, Digital Engagement, a series of virtual events launched in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. DCN is supported by the United States Department of State's Office of Citizen Exchange, and Digital Communication Network is created in 2015. It is a 7,000 members strong collaborative network that connects professionals from a variety of fields and different regions of the world. And we are all committed to have an impact in the new information space. Today, I am with my colleague, Aisha Down, and I am passing the floor to continue this session. Thank you all for being here. Aisha, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Ashkan. I know how much work has gone into putting together these panels and finding our really good speakers. So I want to thank you for doing that and for having me. Today we are talking about big data against corruption in Latin America. We have a great team here to talk to us and be quizzed today. We'll ask them some questions. So I really look forward to it. I guess I'm going to start by introducing Joan Suazo from Honduras. Joan is an investigative journalist based in Honduras who uses open source methods to expose corruption and wrongdoing. He's passionate about data and he's covered topics like COVID-19, migration, and human rights. Joan, can you say a few words?
Welcome. Yeah, hi. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope we all learned a lot. And greetings to my fellow colleagues. Thanks.
Do you have a presentation? Should I go through the introductions and then come back to you?
Yeah, sure. There we go.
Okay, let me do that. All right. Then next we have Ernesto Nunez from Costa Rica. He has a great sense of humor. His biography said something about Clark Kent and Madonna, which was too smart for me to understand. He works in Costa Rica. He's founded La Doble Tracción, which is a news outlet that mixes investigations with humor, gamification, and citizen participation. He's worked on a broad range of topics, from discrimination against LGBTQ people to local government corruption and misspending. So I hope he'll also give us a presentation as well. And finally, we have with us here Katia Ruiz, who is a media professional based in Mexico, who's worked on combating online disinformation and misinformation, and has also collaborated with a nonprofit called Sintrata, which, if I'm right, Katia, that works to combat trafficking in people, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? Say a couple words.
Yeah, sure. Well, I am in an organization called Sintrata, and it works for women who combats exploitation of women, like that. It's the exploitation of women. Here in Mexico City, we call it narcos, and things like that.
What does that mean? The exploit.
Sorry, what?
What does that, the word narco, did you say?
Yeah, narco. Narco is are people that sell drugs and that are narcos. Here in Mexico are called narcos.
Mm-hmm. But you're working with, maybe I misunderstood, you're working with that and the exploitation of women, or its connection to the exploitation.
The exploitation with women, not narcos, no, the exploitation with women. We combat the exploitation of females. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So, okay, I must have missed something. Great. let's. I'm really glad you're all here. As you know, it's a panel about big data against corruption. And so I guess I'd like to ask you all, I'm going to ask you to talk about new ways that journalists in your region are using data and using kind of open source methods and investigations to tell stories about corruption as well as human rights issues. So maybe in doing that, I'll pass the floor to Joan and he can present to us a bit, but also answer that question about what can we learn here about like novel methods. And then afterwards, I'd like to invite Ernesto and Katia to talk to the same issue.
Okay. At first, big data, usually it's a word that is a phrase that is very used very often. But actually, big data, it's turning into small data like very fast because the quantity of new information there is available. So there are many data sets that, for example, here in Honduras, that were kept like in the government or like the terms of trials or public registration that were almost impossible to get because you had to go to public offices and ask for a file, and that could took you like a week or 2 weeks or maybe more, or they could even say that that wasn't available when there was it. But right away there is like a movement to get the open data from many organizations, so we can achieve that very quickly, very safely also, just by accessing an online page. So that's great. That's a way to transform that big data into public data, and a great tool for the journalism. Your mic.
Talk to us a bit more. How does big data become small data? What do you mean by both?
Yeah, when let's say about 20 years ago, let's talk about 5 GB was a lot. The computer, my first computer in 1998 was 20 GB the capacity. Now I have a pen drive that has a lot more. You can download a movie, you can stream, you use like Netflix. The average of streaming in a month for a family, it's about 200 GB. So that's getting bigger, and but in some ways, but like in data like from public records, it's turning small.
In terms of, we now have a lot more capacity to use this data and search it and manipulate it and find connections.
And the way to handle it, like with some tools, there's also very easy, because you can, it's like when you get the sentence of a trial, let's say 10 years ago, you had to read like about 400 pages. Now you can, if it's properly scanned, or if you can convert it to optic scanners, you can just search with Control F and search the word that you are specifically looking for.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I like that point. In other words, that we now have a lot more powerful ways to sift through huge quantities of data to write our stories. But I think it can also be probably really patchy what we have access to and what we don't.
Yeah, of course. But there are many ways to achieve the data. Just like I would recommend to learn to navigate, learn a little bit from HTML, because you can find many flaws in some public pages. For example, you can find there is a link for something, and with that you can crawl through to seek any more information.
So I like that. I especially, as a journalist, I'm always curious to hear like creative ways other journalists are using to get data that otherwise we wouldn't have. Let me now turn to Ernesto. You also worked on some pretty serious investigations. We usually think of big data, I guess, as like a massive leak of documents like the Panama paper, but what other ways have you used to get new data or to find information to support your investigations?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, first of all. And so thank you for the invitation. Well, I'm going to give a little away from my presentation, but in regards to your question, I think that many times I would like to make to differentiate some concepts, because there is a lot of information out there, but that doesn't mean that there's data out there, that information is data. And that doesn't mean that that data is necessarily news. And the difference between those things to me are the following. Information is basically everything that's out there. All the documentation you can find, all the content there is, everything everyone has had to say about certain topics, has had to produce about certain issues, etc. Data is when that is systematized into a database of some sort. That sometimes some governments do that, and you can ask for the database, but other times you have to take that sea of information and turn it into a database. And then that database doesn't necessarily is by itself news, because not all data is relevant to the decision-making process of a citizen in regards to that issue or topic. And I feel that often data journalists or investigative journalists, we tend to confuse those things, and we create a great database, and then our final product is a visualization of that database. But people do not need all that database. We have to
give me an example here.
We have to do the journalistic work of finding the news within that data, the connections within that data, and that should be the final product. So to answer your initial question about, okay, how can we find new ways? Well, there are, for example, in Costa Rica, there's an upcoming election between the end of this year and the following year. And we will have over 20 presidential candidates running. That's over 20 government plans that are going to be sent to the citizens. And there are plans that are over 200 pages long with proposals about every single thing. That is not data in and of itself. That is information. We can convert that into data. For example, by doing an inventory of proposals per topic and give a quantitative outlook or reading of the proposals, how many proposals they have on education, how many proposals they have on the fiscal crisis in Costa Rica. For example, we did that exercise in the last elections, and there were candidates who didn't have one proposal for the fiscal crisis in Costa Rica. They didn't have one proposal regarding gender. And then you have to convert that into news, which is basically the final product. An example of what I think should not be done by journalists. I saw a couple of years ago a story where basically the journalists asked the government for the data of marriages and divorces in Costa Rica. And they did many calculations, and they created a database to be able to see how often do people get a divorce, how long does a marriage last, and you could access the story, and you had a great visualization, and you could look into all that. I really question how much a citizen cares that in April there were so many divorces. That, to me, from a journalistic standpoint, is irrelevant, or is not information that empowers citizens to make to improve their decision-making process in regards to the issue of marriage or the issue of family and all of that. That is a thing that is an example of what I think should not be done. Because I think that's basically getting the database and throwing it into your audience's face. Like, here, take the database and explore it through this great visualization that we just did. And I will be very frank. Sometimes journalists, we tend to, who work on data, we tend to end up doing a masturbatory product. And by that,
a masturbatory product, did you say?
Yes, I will repeat it. We tend to create masturbatory products. And by that, I mean that they are exercises of journalism that are basically focused on giving ourselves as journalists great pleasure, because it's only amongst journalists that we get pleasure out of seeing such a huge database and with a great visualization. But it's not necessarily a great database and a great visualization of a great database where you can explore it all is a great news product. Because to me, as journalists, we are not only hunters of information, we are craftsmen and craftwomen of information, and we are deliverers of that information. And by deliverers, I mean we have to present that in the best way possible in order for you to access the news, not get lost in the sea of information that we very skillfully could turn into a database that is great in technical terms.
So I agree with you there. And I appreciate both the point that you and Joan have made, that we have as journalists access to more data than ever before. And sometimes we get too involved in presenting it without any meaningful analysis or storytelling. But here's a question that comes up for me. What you're talking about so far is talking about the analysis. It's necessary to do analysis, but when does it become an investigation? Like if you have a lot of data, if you've gotten to the point where you've mined a database, crawled a registry, and you now need to present these findings, how would you distinguish between what you're talking about, which seems mostly analysis, and investigation?
To me, there's not necessarily a difference between creating. To me, those processes can go hand in hand, at least the way that I usually tend to work. I don't differentiate in my work. This is a data process and this is the investigation process. I think many times investigative journalism tends to include data journalism. I think sometimes these concepts have been distorted because sometimes when people talk about data journalism, they are associating it with products that show a lot of data and these huge visualizations, but that is really not the case. Data journalists could be an entire investigation where you analyze and systematize and fight for data. And in the end, your resulting product could be a comic, like an artwork, and that's it. And all the process you did was just to end up with a very powerful artwork, an infography, let's call it, that the news that it illustrates could have only been accessed or available through the huge investigation process that went before. And by investigation, to me, that also includes the analysis of the data and the building of the database. Many times, I work with both usually. There are databases that are available and that I ask the government for them, but there are other times where we are the ones who are required, there is this information available, but this is not in the form of a database. So then we have to do the work of creating the database and sometimes fight for it, because many times the data is there or the information is there, but the government wants to play hard and not give it to you right away. To me, all that is the investigation process.
It's an interesting question. Maybe I asked it because I sympathize with you a lot. I feel that as a journalist, sometimes I get all of this cool stuff and I want to write about it because it was hard to get, or I feel clever, and then my editor just consistently asks me the question, like, why do people care and what makes this an investigation, which grows very brutal over time. But I think as you powerfully stated, sometimes you have to put months of work and tons of analysis into something that could be as simple as an artwork or a comic strip, and yet requires it. So thank you. I want to move to.
I think, sorry, just one final thing. And I think those type of products are the most powerful products and examples of data and investigative journalism. Those that are able to synthesize lots of information, lots of research into one simple, accessible, digestible, and yet all-powerful product of information in whatever form that is, whether it's an infography or, in my case, a jingle, for example. You have made jingles to synthesize open data investigations. And that's it.
We look forward to hearing about those more. Let me just move to Katya. Katya, we're talking now about what is big data? Why is it such a catchword these days? But how have you used it, and what does it mean to you in the work you do every day?
I completely agree with Ernesto. He has a lot of big information and good points, but I think that data have an origin, and that is that data starts with people, because if we think about it, the institutions are people, journalists are people. So I think that data starts with people, and if journalists don't have the ethics to do the right thing and to give right information, because there are many journalists that don't give, well, here in Mexico City, there are a lot of journalists that don't give the right information, because government tells them that they need to give, you need to say this, but not that. So there is a little censure here in Mexico City about that. But I think that's why I think data starts with people. If people don't, and if we don't do a realistic information, it's really hard it's really hard that we can have real information.
So what kind of data do you use in the work you're doing?
For example, if we are
I think we lost.
Yeah, I think Katy is having another internet issue.
Internet problems.
So yeah.
Let's come back to that. Johan, you have a presentation, right?
Yes.
Let's do that, because we're talking pretty abstractly at the moment, and I think it benefit our audience. You said you had a story to talk to us about, so that'd be great. And let's go through kind of how what Ernesto and you and Katya have talked about plays into the creation of that work.
Okay, I will share my screen. Please confirm if you can see it.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, we're here with you.
Okay. Well, at first, I'm gonna tell you that actually I currently work for Revistazo. That is digital media that belongs to Asociación para una Sociedad Más Justa, Association for a More Just Society. which also is the national chapter for Transparency International here in Honduras. So we work with a lot of overseeing from process from the government and stuff like that. So currently we had one of our best products that is open for everybody. It's called a web page which is called Open Vaccines. There we cover all the how many vaccines have came to the country, where are they available, if they are both or if they are donations. And we have had a lot of success with this one because many times the government said like, oh, we don't know actually about that. You can check in the webpage from Revistazo to many of the journalists. So because we update it every day and we are very proud of it. Another of the uses that we made last year, we compared with other chapters from Transparency International, from Guatemala and El Salvador, how much every country spent with the pandemic, with the medicine, with the medicaments, and also with the buyers and stuff. And then we found out that there was like some products that were a bit cheaper in Honduras, and other ones a bit cheaper in Guatemala. But in case of El Salvador, we couldn't reach almost anything because they sealed as classified the buying of gloves, of syringes, everything almost everything was closed. So that speak a lot about the country and how it was going to be a little bit authoritarian by Najib, right? Because there was no sense to close some kind of buyings if you are not hiding something. So this one,
just to back up, slow you down here. This is all based. This is your analysis, actually, of open government data that you procured from a website, but you did an analysis on it because it was, or am I wrong?
Yeah, but we also in every country we placed requests for public information, and in El Salvador almost all were denied.
Okay,
so we had a little more transparency in Honduras. Guatemala was a bit close. They even got to denounce a buy from cookies for kids the last day, and it was very overpriced. But because they were very active on the oversight of the process, they could stop it. Okay. Here's like, this is another of our tools. We call it, it's like our jewel. It's called Open Enterprises. It's a lot like Open Corporation. And we have the databases of the chambers of commerce from the three main cities in Honduras. So it's open 24/7, so you can check, you can search by name, by how could you call it? By name, by the partners of a society, and then you can, with just a click, you can download the public registry of that enterprise. We have more than 200,000 companies, and it's a unique tool here in Honduras, and has made the life easier for a lot of, not only of journalists, it's done for people who want to searching for partners, or also they could be searching for a registry or to make a settlement or stuff like that, right? We also had this tool that we couldn't make it to update it, but it is called County Homicide. We're working on it, and we have like all the data about the homicide in Honduras from 2018 to 2020, segregated by department, by gender, and we are trying, but it's very hard, like to know. We're working with the DA officer to know if they have a process open, if they closed it. So we had another tool here in Honduras from the government, but it is not segregated, right? It's like one people died in that place. So this one is open for anyone. And then we also have this tool, Open Medicaments, where we gather all the information from that. In here, it's mostly three branches of the government who both medicaments. So we unite them and we cross it with many of the, and we found out that obviously here in countries like ours, there are like 3 or 4 companies that are who sells almost everything, right? So this is a work that I want to show you. We did it last year. I started with another media outlet called El Pulso. And this gentleman is called Axel Lopez. He called himself Miss Hispanopreneur. He was born in Guatemala, but he fled the country because of the war. And then he said in his book, How to Do Successful Business in Latin America, he called himself Mr. Hispanopreneur. He called himself Mr. Money King, Mr. Cash King. So as you can see in the left, he enrolled in the army and fought in the country Gulf. And there is a photo with him with Colin Powell. So he presented himself as a big shot, a big entrepreneur, and a guru from selling, right? And in March, in 18 March of the last year, when the pandemic was starting, Honduras bought to him 7 mobile hospitals for almost $48 million.
Wait, they gave him the grant, or wait, hold on. Honduras did what?
Honduras, the government, bought him 7 mobile hospitals. He promised they were being delivered in 60 days. Yeah, great. For $48 million. It was especially for COVID. They had negative pressure, electric doors. Yeah, everything. It looked flawless when they presented it. But and then you can say, wow, that's a big deal, right? Because he's Mr. Hispanopreneur. I'm pretty sure he's a big deal. But when the press started to ask what was going on, how did they fund him? The director of the Honduran dependency said, no, I Googled it. And I found the webpage, hospitalesmobiles.com or mobilehospitalsusa.com. So he said he inquired him through this webpage and vowed and made the buy-in for $48 million. Yeah, believe it or not, right? This is the webpage. This is how it's supposed to look. And well, the other thing that is the only documents that Honduras have for a transaction of $48 million are these 2 purchase orders. We don't have a contract. We don't have a guarantee. We don't have anything, absolutely anything. So these 2 pieces of paper are the only proof that Honduras has about that purchase.
And they say that they just found this guy on the internet and
like this webpage, and just like hospitalesmobiles.com. It's like, right,
that's
no one would believe that.
Great. Okay, so then what did they say when you exposed this?
Yeah, we started to look at him, and he, through the Chamber of Commerce from Florida, he had 3 active businesses. So here's an example from an open data, right? Because you just put his name, and then we find the other enterprise, and we start checking. And this one is the pro forma invoice that he sent, right? And you can see his logo, his address, his phone number. But the most important thing here are these two registers. When we checked the address, we found out that he doesn't have an office. He only used a P.O. box in a UPS store in a strip mall in Orlando, Florida. It is like 5 miles before Disney. So many Honduras who have been in Disney have passed in front of his super offices. And we're talking about a guy we sent cash upfront, $48 million, right? So we started.
Wait, he got the $48 million upfront at his PO box in the UPS store?
Well, it was a wire transfer. It was a wire transfer, and we got to Oh, well, I will tell you later about that account. So,
That's excellent.
well, the only thing, when we found this one, we were sure that at least we had a story, right? Because there was impossible that, and in here in Honduras, they said, the government said that he was the owner of the fabric. That, but we, when we saw this, we knew that he was at least a third party. Could be at least in the best case scenario, he would be a third party. But then we started seeking for these registers. As you can see, there is one in NATO, and there is another one with this code M and code K. So we went to the internet, and we found out that the NCASE, that is a registry for, it's a commercial and government entity from the NATO, that you have to be registered to sell to NATO. It was on the name of SDI Global in Turkey, but find out a company in Turkey was a bit hard. So we kept digging, and we found out this ITAR registered, that is International Trafficking Arms Regulation. And this one was registered by a guy called Michael Murphy, who lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the US. So for us, it's like very, very easy to find out who is someone in the United States. So I Googled him, I got his phone number, and I called him like at 2 p.m. He didn't answer at first, and he called me back at 3 p.m., let's say 1 hour later. And I asked him if he was selling hospital to Honduras. And he said no, but that he was available because they sell hospital, right? Then I told him, and do you know? Yeah.
Do you know? Okay.
Do you know who is Axel Lopez? And he told me, no, I have no idea who is Axel Lopez. And then he was like, but he's selling hospitals to Honduras in your behalf with your NATO code, with your ITAR code. And he said, like, I'm not understanding you. He said, like, hold me for a sec. Let me check my files. And 10 minutes later, he called me again, and he quoted the hospitals with them. But he never bought them. The day that Honduras paid the money, he asked for a discount, and he never, ever reached them again. He just used his designs, he just used his accreditations, his registry, and he never turned back again. So
it's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah, of course. And this guy was like, oh my God, they're using all my information. So he sent me many pieces of the mail that they exchanged, how they negotiated, how they make a bargain. And this is the answer that they send as the IGLO. That is an enterprise that sold like 100 hospitals during the first years of the pandemic, because they had that solution. They used to sell like rapid deployment camps and hospitals like for war. So they had that technology to deliver very fast. So at first, Honduras bought 2 hospitals that he quoted for 9.8 million, and he sold them for 15.9. We paid 15.9 millions for what Axel quoted for 9.8. And the second boat from Honduras, the cost was 19.7, and we paid 31.5 millions.
Just to be clear, the hospitals, were they ever delivered or no?
Yeah, but in very bad shape.
Ah, okay. So yeah. Axel was sort of the middleman. He impersonated this guy, and then he also kind of skimmed off this crazy cut, it seems, off of the money.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Millions.
So they came, he offered that they would be here in 6 months, in 2 months, sorry, in 60 days. And they came 6 months later. And as you can see, many pieces were used. They had computers with Windows 95 and without a license. They had, even right away, there were 7 hospitals. Just one can keep, they were offered for 91 beds, and only one is treating COVID patients and can only keep 30 patients. So it was a huge scam.
So
As you can see, also there's corroed. There are many. They had like they come bent. Some pieces came bent. The most expensive thing was the mechanical respirators. He didn't send any. None. He sent none. He sent many anesthesia machines that won't be ever used in some hospitality facility like this one. So, well, it was a huge race here in the country. Finally, this guy his name is Marco Bogran. He was the director of the branch of the government who bought the hospitals, and he always kept telling that he bought from good faith. He always say like, no, I don't know. I did my good faith. I bought from good faith. And well,
wait, let me because I just have to keep this panel going. I want you to tell me now about this story, because this is brilliant and it's like quite fascinating. What, as a journalist, what were the most important data resources that you used to really crack this case? Was it the US registry? Was it the Turkish? What really empowered you to do this?
Well, actually, you have many times I have had this feeling, like you said, this isn't working. There must be something, right? Then I felt
Constantly.
like that, and
Constantly.
then I searched for these codes, and I go to the NATO and find out, and like, let's say in 20 minutes, I found that he wasn't the guy who was selling the hospital, right? I knew there was something. But at some time, I said, in that moment, I said, like, it's too easy. I can't believe that, like, you can achieve this like too fast. So I asked for a friend who works also in investigation, and I told him like, dude, can you please check who belongs this number to, without telling him anything? And he was like telling me, oh, these are the orders, this is the address, they sell this, they have delivered this, they have used this. And I was like, no, I'm not crazy. This is really going on.
You mean the phone number? You looked up the phone number?
Yeah, we looked at everything. We were like, yeah. And the other guy didn't exist, right? And also we checked with OCCRP for the exportations, registries, and you see when you exist and when you don't, right? So finally, actually Marco Bogran and his second on that branch of government are in jail waiting for a trial. This is the first case, but they have like 8 accusations more because they did a mess during the beginning of the pandemic. They centralized all the volume them and they sucked. And well, when you start like to investigate this one, these 2 photos is Axel Lopez like 15 or 20 days ago. He had an international warrant from Interpol to be detained, but he keeps telling the hospitals with the same logos, with the same enterprise in a health fair in Miami. And then this happens like, how if you sold to Honduras $48 million and you didn't buy what you should, you turn yourself the things, you should, it's like, why you keep selling, right? Why you keep working if you have $48 million?
I mean,
why? Because we're pretty sure, or no, not pretty sure, but we think that he was just a middleman from someone very high in the government and told him like, look, we're going to do this and you will have a cut. But he don't consider, his cut wasn't enough, right? Because if you have 40 million, it could be like in Dubai easily or wherever you want with that kind of money.
On a yacht somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to read more, there is with, we work this piece, another piece with OCCRP. It's called Mr. Hispanopreneur, the man behind Honduras 47 million coronavirus disaster. So you can check it.
Excellent. I'm going to thank you for that. And I also now I've got to ask Ernesto to talk. Ernesto, I hope you have a presentation. And one of the things that you've talked about, but I'd like you to speak to more is I find it really challenging, and I think we all do, using data to tell good stories that engage audiences. People tend to use interest if I describe like a network of BVI companies. So, your site is really well known for engaging people, for its humor. I like the Eye of Sauron in your logo, although I don't understand it. So I'd love to hear your presentation, and if you can talk to us about the storytelling tactics you use to get people involved in what you do.
Okay, perfect. Let me share my screen.
Also, what is the Eye of Sauron on that it's on your Twitter feed? It's like this Lord of the Rings reference. It looks really cool, but what is it?
Everything will be explained in the presentation. Don't worry.
Okay. All right. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my name is Ernesto, and I'm the director of La Doble Tracción, which is a transmedia news outlet that mixes investigative and data journalism with humor and games. We have 8 years of experience doing this across many different platforms and formats that go from the traditional radio and TV to more innovative formats such as news games, like small video games, toys, events, music, like the jingles that I referenced previously, and many more that you will see throughout this presentation. Currently, our architecture has like 4 pillars, which is Debates Relámpago, which translates to Lightning Debates, which is a citizen debate club. We have the Wakalatector, which translates to the shit detector, which is basically not a fact-checking service, but a journalism checking service. Like we check the news that news outlets produce and see if they comply with journalistic standards. We also have a radio show that focuses on like people at the universities, in the public university system in Costa Rica. And we also have Los Watchis. That translates to the Watchers, which is basically a network of hyperlocal newsrooms that focus on investigating local governments and pushing for their transparency. So that's why we have a reference to the Eye of Sauron, because we are watching very intensely the local governments in Costa Rica. This presentation, great. Yes?
No, continue. I'm interested.
This presentation will focus on how it is necessary to report like a gamer the news that are no game.
Or it's game over.
Or it's game over, yes. By the news that are no game, I'm focusing on all those news that have to do with corruption, that are results of investigative journalism and data journalism. To me, it is a must to apply game design thinking into our reporting process in order to make these stories, which are basically the most important stories. I mean, I don't know what is more important or should be more important than corruption stories, and those stories that speak truth to power and check them, in order for those type of stories to be engaging to the audience and not get lost in a great visualization that is not engaging or a great database that is not engaging. To me, journalism against corruption tends to be many times too much to swallow. Because I mean, it is too much to swallow, even for some of our journalists. Because not only the stories are very dense, they are very depressing, but also when it comes to investigative and data journalism, it is a lot of information to swallow. And sometimes even as much as you push yourself to synthesize, summarize, and polish the information, there are simply some pieces of data that you cannot leave out in order for it to be a solid piece of journalism, in order to have the necessary context to be understood, etc. And clearly, we are not all Kirby's that can just swallow every single thing, let alone citizens. So we need to apply, or I think we can apply game design thinking in order for journalism against corruption to be so yummy that people cannot ignore it, that people want to read it, that people want to consume it and hopefully repeat it. Throughout this presentation, I will show you different game design elements that can inspire the reporting process in order of this type of stories, in order for them to be more engaging or be even more solid, journalistically speaking. One of those elements is the hacking element that is always present in video games. We all know, we all have those friends who are like basically hackers, and they know all the shortcuts to the video game. They know how to get special abilities in the video game. And I don't. I think we as journalists should be hackers of the data. I don't mean it in the like literal sense of the word, but we should be able to find those shortcuts for our readers, for our audience. We should hack those huge databases and find the stories, the news stories within them, and not expect the citizens to go into the database and just like find the stories for themselves. No. We have to be the hackers for them. We did this in La Doble Tracción during the last presidential elections when we created we thematically inventoried the government plans of all 13 presidential candidates. This is an interesting example because basically we used data as a hack, as a filter, because as I said previously, we have like 13 government plans of over 200 pages, and that is clearly unrealistic. It is clearly unrealistic to expect that citizens are going to eat all that information. So we decided, okay, no. We're going to facilitate a first reading into these government plans using just quantitative information. So we said, okay, in terms of education, let's count how many proposals does each government plan has for this issue. How many for fiscal crisis, how many in terms of gender, etc. So that way we turn information into data, and then we have to turn that data into the news, because it's not only, okay, we did the inventory and here, go find it. No. We have to determine what is more important about it and what is the best way to present this. So we created these infographies that look like abacus, and we circulated them on social media. And we also did a guessing game using these artworks that are like vertical and long. So we just showed the abacus and we asked social media followers, which party do you think will have the less amount of proposals? And they would click and the answer would appear. So they would see if their smell was right or wrong about how bad or good their parties were in terms of these issues. So I think this is a great example of how to hack and how the hacking thinking in video games can also apply to data journalism and investigative journalism. We even did we had a TV show and we did a segment where we used this information and we were able to expose and synthesize that there were candidates with 0 proposals for the fiscal crisis. Costa Rica is like one of the greenest countries in terms of discourse and in terms of policy, and there were candidates with just 1 environmental proposal, candidates with 0 proposals relating to gender. So we created this segment in our TV show where we put our hosts to play a game called, well, Disparados, and they would basically be tested about how much they knew or were right regarding the results.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay.
And if they were not correct, they would be shot with water guns. And in the process, well, I think you can see it here, maybe if it loads. Yeah, well, they would be shot if they were right or wrong. I think this was a great way to synthesize, because Also, a great challenge with data and with great coverages is that information starts to be too much and it starts to disperse. I mean, every single one of those inventories was distributed individually. So this was a great way, this segment, to make them all come together in one single video and allow audiences to go through all the hacks of those inventories in one same video of 4 minutes in a very fun and engaging way.
So you also talk about, and I think these are like very catchy ways to kind of bring people in and to draw really fascinating conclusions from the data. I'm curious because you've also mentioned civic participation, so getting the public involved in your investigations. Could you talk about that?
Yes, well, I will then go to another hack because that's not the next one that I have. Let me see. This question,
I love your graphics, by the way.
Thank you. This question that you just asked relates to another design element that I think is very important and very absent from data journalism and investigative journalism. In video games, it is very integral to the gaming experience to have a multiplayer and cooperation mode option, where you not only play with different people, but you cooperate to push the story forward and to fight the challenges and all that. I think we as journalists, when we develop our reporting processes, we should focus and be inspired by that. How do we make this reporting process a multiplayer cooperation process with the audience, where the audience can participate not at the end of the reporting process by making a comment and saying, yeah, blah, 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 this is great. No. From the very inception of the idea, from the very birth of the smelling where's the news, where could be the news story, we should incorporate them through all that process.
Can we send like an army of people to break into the corporate registry of Dubai, for example, or is that dreaming too big?
Yes, that's too much.
Okay.
Too much.
Then how does it work?
Yeah, but what we could do is do this. When I talked about the watchers, those watches, as I said, this is a network of hyper-local newsrooms focused on local government transparency. But it is not any network, because it is actually co-run and co-financed between journalists and citizens from each of these communities. So they have a membership to the news outlet, but this membership is really more of a stock in the news outlet of their community. And depending on the range of their stock, which basically the most expensive stock is $10. So, okay. Depending on the range, they get more voice and even vote in the direction of the news outlet. So for example, our first level is called a participative membership, where members get voice in the news agenda of the newsroom that is in their community. So every single month, the journalists send to the community their proposal of news agenda. Like, we want to do this, we want to investigate the mayor because of this and that. And the community gives feedback on that agenda. And for example, sometimes we've received feedback that is irrelevant to me.
Like what?
I don't recall exactly, but there's especially one lady who is very frank in her feedback. So she's like, I don't see the relevance of that. Or there are other people who actually keep you as a journalist fairer, in the sense that they tell you, hey, you haven't done anything on education. Why don't you do this that is going on in the schools here in our county? Or, hey, what about the environment? You haven't done that in a while. So we were able to create through this model a more integral, more an agenda that is more integral and also more representative of the interests and the needs of the citizens. We also have a correspondent level, which basically allows citizens to not only have their voice in the news agenda, but also have a space guaranteed in our news outlet to publish and to be mentored through their process. So for example, we've had citizens who are very focused on certain activist issues like environment or education, for example, and they have come to us with their correspondent membership and tell us, we want to write about this. So they become part of the reporting process and the editing process like any of our journalists, and we work the story together with them. So I can remember right now an example of the local government of Montes de Oca, which is a county that we cover. They have this thing called participatory budgets, which is basically that they give grants to different projects that are presented by the communities. And it's the community that decides, okay, we are doing this with this money. This leader of an association of a neighborhood came to us and he told us that one of these participatory budgets was basically on hold. It was like a remodelation, like a refurnishing of a communal center, and it started and then it basically froze in time, and it started to, it's still deteriorating, and it has like oxidized and all of this stuff. So he basically wrote the story along with us about this situation. And the last level of participation or co-direction that we have is the editorial membership, and that allows vote in the direction of the newsroom. And by vote, I mean that, for example, people can demand or vote, submit to a vote, if they feel that the newsroom should have like a quota on certain issues. For example, we cover one of the counties that we cover is one of the communities with the highest amount of elderly representation in Costa Rica. So for example, citizens here or members here could submit to vote that our local newsroom has to dedicate 25% of our stories to the elders, to elderly related issues. And in that way, members can actually influence the direction of the newsroom and the type of newsroom that they want to have in their community. And this has resulted in very interesting investigative journalism. First, because it is a deterrent against mistrust of the media. According to Edelman Barometer, there are 60% of at least 60% of people mistrust the media. I mean, in some places, they even trust more the government than the media, which is terrible, in my opinion, sometimes. This model that we use in the watchers, in those watches, also creates like a citizen system of checks and balances, because unlike traditional media, where stocks are available for very few rich people, in this case, we, the owners of the news outlet, give away part of our power to members. And every single member, I mean, who can pay $10 the most, has power to vote and press in the direction of the news outlet. And the other thing that I mentioned already is a citizen-driven agenda. This requires, and this relates a lot to what Katia was saying about the ethics of journalism. Because as a journalist within this model, you have to be able to bite your tongue and not pursue masturbatory exercises, because it's basically the community that is boss. And you might have a great idea that you think, oh my God, it is gonna be a bomb, but it's not coming or resonant within the members of your community. We have exposed through this, I think through this.
So I'm going to, this is fascinating. And I wish that we had more time, but I think you made some really good points here. And I actually love it. I love both the idea of the gamification of journalism but the points you've made, which are really good, and this model that you've set up is pretty incredible. It seems the idea of having actually a stock in a local media outlet and a vote, and then having that kind of responsive relationship with your audience is great. Unfortunately, I have to let, not unfortunately, fortunately, I have to turn the floor now to Katya, because I think she's going to talk to us about maybe something you talked about, mistrust of the media and disinformation. So Katya, can I trust you to give us a presentation?
Yes.
Great. Are you, you're on mute. Can you share your screen?
I am trying to share the screen, but.
Okay. Sorry, guys, it's, we never have enough time for all the interesting points that our journalists have, but the discussion's been really great, so thank you.
Can you see my presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Good,
So,
all right.
Okay, yes, you can see the presentation. Sorry, I am having internet problems. So, hi, I am Katya. I want to thank to Ashton for this opportunity. I work in an agency and I am working in public relations. So here I am going to talk about misinformation. So why misinformation is embraced? Because it's emotional, because it has a lot of control, lack of security, and it needs for social belonging. So we need to ask ourselves, how does information impact our clients, our business, our industry, our media, our platform recommendations, or our own media literacy or consumption habits? So not all misinformation is created equal, because we have a lot of type of misinformation. For example, we have the misinformation that says that information is false, but it doesn't have the intention to cause harm. On the other side, we have the disinformation that is false and is deliberately created to harm a person, social group, organization, or country. And we have the malinformation, that is information that is based on reality, used to inflict harm on a person or organization or in a country with the effort to ignite opposition. So the agents of misinformation have many motives. We have stage actors, ideological players, we have entrepreneurs and trolls. And here in Mexico City, for example, with the ideological players, there are a lot of trolls. And finally, how to have a conversation with our clients. As I said, I work in an agency and I work with clients, with companies. So we need to engage the task force to determine how to best engage your client. So you need to propose an assessment of communication operations, existing plans, and intelligence capabilities to identify the misinformation risk. And the areas of application can include the review of potential business impact and current ability to identify misinformation. Also, we have proactive communications planning. The update increases scenario processes, because in companies, all the time you have crisis scenario plans, and you need to have an influencer community identification and research, and of course the data and the analytics review. And that's all.
Great. Appreciate that. I think it highlights the need for journalists to be careful in how they present data in an increasingly complex world. And I know DCN is also really interested on this area of fighting misinformation. So we definitely appreciate it. I think I have to start to wrap our panel up. So I'm going to ask you guys a final question, which is my favorite question, because I'm a nerd. But what resources do young journalists in your area, and we'll start with you, Eduardo. Not Eduardo, I'm very sorry, Ernesto, I'm very tired. What resources do young journalists in your region need to do better investigative stories involving data, what tools do you feel are missing for journalists like you? And in fact, if you could have any data set in the world made open to the public, what would you choose and why? So.
Okay, those were many final questions, but okay.
Are you on mute? Can I hear you?
No, I'm not.
Okay, now I can hear you. I don't know what happened.
Okay. I was just saying that those were many final questions, not just one.
Right.
But
okay.
Okay,
Pick the
well,
one you
in
want.
terms of what I think young journalists are missing, well, that's an interesting question because I consider myself a young journalist. So it's basically, what am I missing?
Yeah, what do you need? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could have any data set in the world, yeah.
Well, I don't know, in terms to do great data journalism or investigative journalism or journalism that focuses on fighting corruption, I think what we as journalists are missing is an interdisciplinary education or way of thinking. I think that we, even younger journalists, we are still struggling to catch up to the new reality, an ever-changing reality of the media landscape that we have. We have not yet embraced the fact that we are no longer only hunters of information, that we hunt the information and here, take it, newspaper, and you will circulate it, and you have a captive audience of millions of people, and peace out, because I don't have to really think about those numbers because you have the captive audience. That is borderline dead, if not dead already. We have to think ourselves in terms of being also craftsmen and women of information, and also delivers of that information. And in order to do that, we have to have an interdisciplinary thinking. That, I think, is lacking from academia. I don't see that in academia at all. I don't see that in the industry, at least in Costa Rica, and I would dare to say in most of Latin America. The industry is still even more far away from catching up than us journalists, because they are stuck in certain business models that also hinder the innovation in not only in business models, but also in the way journalism has to be done. Even if we were to leave outside of the discussion the monetary part of the situation, like even if we had all the money in the world, there are still business models that hinder the creation of better journalism that is more engaging. And that is the biggest challenge for data journalism and investigative journalism. So I think if you want to do great data journalism and investigative journalism, you have to go outside your box. So first, identify what your box is. Journalism is a box, really. I mean, if you're a gamer, you can apply games to journalism. If you're a musician, if outside of your journalism life, you do a lot of music and you play music, believe me, you can apply that to make your stories better. But that is not promoted in traditional media. They don't really think outside of your role as a journalist in the traditional sense.
I appreciate this answer. I think you're a far more profound thinker than I am. I just want someone to steal the BVI corporate registry. I mean, but with all the beneficial owners, and just give it to me on a USB drive. But
but that would take away the fun of it for me.
But I want it.
I don't know. I want to get it, but I don't want to give it to me right away.
I want your army of citizens who are shareholders in your newspaper to just get really upset about something, or the Dubai corporate registry, and just like mountain. Anyway, I'll save that planning for later.
Well,
I shouldn't talk.
In one of our newsrooms, for example, we have created collective petitions that over 1,000 neighbors have signed to demand public information from local governments. Because if central governments are really idiotic in terms of providing public information that is guaranteed by law, local governments are even worse. I mean, I could tell you some horrific stories about how they want to withhold information from citizens.
Excellent. We have to save that. I have to be the terrible moderator of the panel here and move on. I want this answer from Joan. Joan, what tools are missing for you? And if you could have any data set in the world made available to you, what would you choose and why?
Well, I think that the access to tools online it's getting bigger, right? I have a friend who is a great designer, and he told me like, oh, I can explain you very easily how to make this kind of visualization, but you have to know that in 5 years it will be like automatic. And they were like, no, then I will wait for 5 years, right? Better. So many times I think that we as journalists in realities like Latin America, I think it's very useful, like to dare is the first step. To dare to be different, to do things differently, to be brave. Because in here, that's a reality, and it's very hard. Another thing that I always recommend to young people is to learn English, because that opens a lot of doors. Even though if you want to do something that could look very easy, but maybe you can find a video on YouTube or listen to a podcast. I learned a lot of journalism podcasts. So that in the basic way, for me, it's like the rest you can go on the way, learning a little bit, asking a favor to somebody who can help you. And I'm talking about the research. I've been like reading a lot and very keeping up with this news that NYU, New York University, was doing a study about the data in Facebook from users about depression, and Facebook told them that they should keep that like the right ways for them, because they created an API. So Facebook shut them down, and they were very criticized. Yeah, I would love to get that data, or at least what was they looking for.
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah,
I would love that.
The great answer, actually. Yeah, appreciate it. Katya, what tools have been really important to you in your work, and what tools do you think are missing?
I agree with Joan. I think it's Joan. I agree with him, because I think that there is a lot of censorship, not only in other Latin American countries. There are a lot of censorship. And I think that people need to be ethical, because, as I mentioned, each person is responsible for what they are writing, because, as I say, institutions are people, government are people. So I think that, like humans, we have a huge responsibility with everyone. So that will be my answer.
All right, I agree with you. Well said. All right, guys, it's 7:20 here in Jordan. I have to thank you for joining me. This was really a privilege for me to moderate, and I'm sure for our audience learned a lot. Let's see. I'm going to pass this now to Ashken to close the floor, and this whole panel is available online, streamed on YouTube, and our panelists maybe are also, if they have more insights to share, will leave their contact information or upload their presentations, so that we can learn more from them and the really strong work they've been doing. So Ashken.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Thank you all for being with us. Ernesto, Joan, Katy, thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be the speakers. With Ernesto, we have been this is the second webinar we are doing, and we are much interested in gaming industry and promotion, media literacy through games. Misinformation, disinformation is one of our priority works that DCN is doing, and we would love to keep in touch with you, Katy, to identify what are the work you are doing and what are the tools that you're using, how you're addressing the mis and dis and malinformations in your country. And of course, Juan, so let's keep in touch, because the work, the investigative works that work you are doing in the country is investigation journalism is another priority, as the series of the whole month of September has been identifying and talking about the corruption investigation cases in various countries and in various regions, from Kyrgyzstan to Africa, and now we are with you in Latin America. And to our audience, it is a great pleasure that you have been with us, and please keep registering to DCN community. Keep going with us, because we are already arranging another series of events for October. We will keep you all posted, and would like to say a great and big thank you to Aisha for moderating these great panels throughout the month. And thank you for your time, thank you for devotion, and thank you for the amazing work. Thank you all. And we will, as Aisha said, so we are going to send you follow-up emails with a summary of the event, with links. And if any of the speakers would like to share their presentations with the audience, please do share with us, and we will disseminate it to our community. And we keep staying with you all in touch and coming with more events, ideas, projects, works that we would like to do with you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.